No one in the wealthy district of North Crest ever remembered her name. They remembered her hands, small, calloused, always smelling faintly of the laundromat detergent she used at home. They remembered her clothes, plain, faded, never matching the shimmering gloss of those around her. And they remembered the way she walked, quiet, almost invisible, like someone trying not to disturb a world that clearly didn't want her in it. Her name was Zara Hale, 26, soft-spoken, bright as lightning, but always underestimated. Born on the wrong side of the city, in a neighborhood people from North Crest pretended didn't exist. Every morning, Zara arrived before dawn to clean the marble floors of Whitford International, the largest and most prestigious investment firm in Atlanta. While the city slept, she vacuumed empty boardrooms where billion-dollar deals would later take place, wiped fingerprints off glass doors belonging to people who wouldn't even look her way, and arranged the leather chairs in the executive floor with careful precision. It was ironic, she often thought, that she knew the company better than most of the executives working there. But there was one person who made her job unbearable, one person who turned her into a joke for fun, one person who had more power over the building's atmosphere than the CEO himself, Damian Whitford, the heir, the perfection, the golden boy of North Crest, the son of the CEO, the man who had the arrogance of someone who had never tasted hardship, never known fear, never been denied anything. Damian didn't just dislike Zara. He enjoyed reminding her that she didn't belong. It started years ago when they were both in high school. Zara attended on a scholarship. Damian attended because he was a Whitford. She was the girl who arrived with secondhand clothes and homemade lunches. He was the boy whose life was planned in diamonds and gold. And he had looked her dead in the eyes one afternoon and said, "You dream above your class, Zara. People like you should stay in the shadows." That sentence had followed her for 9 long years. And today, on the morning that would change everything, she heard his voice again. Zara was cleaning the glass railing on the 34th floor when she heard the elevator ding. She straightened, already preparing to lower her gaze like she always did when executives walked by. But it wasn't an executive. It was him. Damian stepped out of the elevator, designer suit crisp, tie perfect, hair swept back like he was posing for a magazine cover. His eyes landed on Zara instantly, like a predator spotting something weak. "Well, well," he drawled, "if it isn't my favorite background decoration." Zara tightened her grip on the cloth she was holding. "Good morning, Mr. Whitford." "Still here?" he asked mockingly. "Still cleaning floors? You know, Zara, at some point you might want to upgrade to a real career." "Oh, wait," he smirked. "You'd actually have to qualify for one." Zara inhaled slowly. Her mother always told her, silence is its own form of strength. But today, something inside her twitched. A small ember, a tiny spark. Damian leaned closer. "You know what the funniest thing about you is? You look at this building like you'll someday own a piece of it, as if you could ever stand where I stand." He laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "People like you," he said, "were born to serve people like me." Zara said nothing, not because she agreed, but because the rage forming in her chest was too sharp, too dangerous, and too loud to trust her own voice. A strange twist of fate. Later that morning, while she was organizing cleaning supplies, she overheard 2 executives whispering in the hallway. "Whitford's in trouble. The board is pressuring him. Something about the quarterly reports being falsified. Could cost the family everything." Zara froze. Whitford International? Trouble? The Whitfords untouchable? Impossible. She leaned closer, pretending to adjust the mop bucket. And the worst part? Someone inside leaked it. CEO is furious. Damian is panicking. Zara blinked. Damian? Panicking? He never panicked. She returned to her cart, heart pounding. Something had shifted. The cracks in the golden tower were showing. "This the night everything broke." Zara finished her shift late and stepped outside into the cool night air. She pulled her jacket tight around her and hurried toward the bus stop. But before she reached it, a familiar voice called out, "Zara!" Her chest tightened. Not tonight. Damien stumbled out of a black car parked near the curb. His tie was loose, his shirt half unbuttoned. He looked nothing like the polished man from earlier. He looked unraveled. "What do you want, Mr. Whitford?" Zara asked cautiously. He walked toward her, eyes wild. "You heard the rumors, didn't you?" he snapped. "Everyone's talking." Zara remained silent. Damien continued, breath shaky. "They're trying to blame me, my own father, the board, the investors. They think I leaked the financial issues." He laughed bitterly. "Me? As if I'd ever sabotage my own company." Zara didn't move. Damien stared at her as though realizing something for the first time. "You're the only one who's always here, the only one who sees everything. You're around every corner, every office, every floor." He took a step closer. "You know things, don't you?" Zara felt her heartbeat in her throat. "I don't know anything about the company's internal matters," she said firmly. But Damien shook his head. "I think you do. And if the board thinks you do..." His voice dropped. "You're in danger." Zara froze. "Danger? From what? From whom?" Damien's jaw tightened. "There's someone looking for a scapegoat." A beat. "And you're the easiest target." The world around Zara seemed to tilt. Her breath caught. "You're lying," she whispered. "Am I?" Damien asked. "For the first time in your life, Zara, people in power actually noticed you. And not in a good way." He stepped back toward his car. "Be careful, Zara Hale." Before she could respond, he got in the car and sped away. Zara stood alone on the sidewalk, her mind racing. This wasn't bullying. This wasn't arrogance. This was a warning. But why? Why help her now? Why protect the girl he mocked for years? Unless Damien himself was more desperate than she realized. The shift begins. Zara barely slept that night. She replayed Damien's words over and over. "People like you were born to serve people like me." But tonight he didn't sound like someone above her. He sounded like someone who had finally fallen from the top. And for the first time in her life, Zara felt something change inside her. Not fear, not shame, not humiliation, something sharper, something colder. Resolve. If the Whitfords wanted to turn her into a scapegoat, she would not run. She would not hide. She would not cry. She would rise. Because there was one thing she always knew deep down. You can only push a quiet woman so far before she stops being quiet. The next morning, the atmosphere inside Whitford International was different. Tense. Heavy. Electrified with fear. Executives who usually walked with straight backs and lifted chins now moved with hushed steps, whispering behind closed doors. Assistants typed faster than usual. Security guards lingered near restricted hallways. Zara sensed it immediately. You could smell panic the same way you could smell bleach. Sharp, sour, unmistakable. She pushed her cleaning cart through the 20th floor, pretending not to notice the frantic energy buzzing around her. But someone else noticed her. "Hey, custodial girl." Zara turned slowly. It was Meryl Lawson, one of the junior analysts. Always perfectly dressed, always overconfident, always looking down at Zara as though she were gum on the floor. "What is it?" Zara asked, her voice steady. Meryl approached, arms crossed. "Executives are looking for you. Something about the security logs." Then she smirked. "Did you do something?" Zara didn't flinch. "No." "Well," Meryl lowered her voice dramatically. Maybe they just need someone disposable." Zara stared at her for a long moment. "Disposable? Of course. People like Meryl, polished, comfortable, always saw people like Zara as replaceable. But something was different today. Zara wasn't shrinking. She wasn't apologizing. She simply turned her back and walked away, summoned. 10 minutes later, Zara's supervisor, Mrs. Arlington, a kind but nervous woman, approached her. "Zara, sweetheart, There are 2 men from upper management requesting you in the conference room. Zara blinked once. Upper management? Requesting her? Mrs. Arlington wrung her hands. They looked serious. Just go, okay? Keep calm. Zara pushed the cleaning cart aside and walked down the hallway. Each step felt heavier, heavier, heavier. When she reached conference room 12B, 2 men in expensive suits were waiting inside. She recognized one, Mr. Hargrove, the head of corporate risk. The other she had only seen in company newsletters, Mr. Pierce, a board-appointed investigator. They both looked at her with controlled suspicion. Miss Hale, Mr. Pierce said, please take a seat. She sat, back straight, face calm. Mr. Hargrove opened a file. You've been an employee with Whitford International for nearly 3 years, correct? Yes. Your access badge allows you on all floors before office hours? Yes. You are alone in the building from 4 a.m. to 6:45 a.m. almost every day? Yes. Mr. Pierce steepled his fingers. And you clean the executive offices, including the CEO's private suite, unsupervised? Yes. The room fell silent. Zara understood exactly where this was going. They were building a case, brick by brick, one that she could be buried under. Mr. Pierce slid a printed stack of papers across the table. These, he said, are access logs from the last 3 months. Zara looked at them. Her badge number repeated again and again. 4:22 a.m. CEO Office 5, 05 a.m. Boardroom, 4:51 a.m. Level 36. Hallway, 5:30 a.m. Financial Archives. Her usual routine, but they weren't showing it as routine. They were showing it as opportunity. Ms. Hale, Mr. Pierce continued quietly, critical financial documents were leaked to the press. Documents housed on floors you regularly access. Documents you had proximity to. Zara inhaled slowly. So you're accusing me? She asked softly. Mr. Hargrove leaned forward. We're not accusing you. A pause. Yet? The word sliced the air cleanly. Yet, the trap tightens. Zara met Mr. Pierce's eyes. I didn't leak anything, she said. Do you know who might have? He asked. Zara didn't respond because she did know. It wasn't her. It wasn't Damien. It wasn't even someone from the top floors. It was someone who wanted the Whitford empire cracked in half. Someone with more to gain than to lose. But Zara wasn't stupid enough to say names without proof. Mr. Pierce closed the folder. Ms. Hale, the board is concerned. This leak could cost the company billions. Someone wants a scapegoat. So you chose me, she whispered. Mr. Hargrove folded his hands. You had access. And no power to protect myself, Zara added quietly. Silence. For the first time, they looked uncomfortable. Not guilty, just uncomfortable that she had the clarity to see what was happening. Mr. Pierce stood. An internal review has been opened. Until it concludes, we're recommending you stay available. They dismissed her. Zara left the room with her spine straight, holding on to every piece of dignity like armor. When she stepped into the hallway, Damien Whitford himself was standing outside. He looked at her. She looked back. You went in alone? He asked. Yes. How bad? They're building something, she said. Damien cursed under his breath. Zara blinked. Why do you care? She asked finally. Damien's jaw clenched. Because my father thinks I leaked those documents, and if he can pin it on you instead, he will. Zara searched his face. It wasn't kindness. It wasn't guilt. It was desperation. The perfect prince was afraid. You're in danger, Zara, he said quietly. From who? From the same people trying to take me down. Then he added, You're convenient. Convenient, disposable, replaceable. Every word echoed through her ribs. The moment she breaks. After her shift, Zara walked out of the building. But instead of heading home, she walked to the river. The city lights shimmered across the water. She clenched her fists. For years she had accepted her place. The bottom, the shadows, the quiet corners where she wasn't noticed. But they weren't just ignoring her now. They planned to erase her. Me, a scapegoat, a joke. Her breath fogged in the cold air. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't crying. She was transforming. If the Whitfords wanted a war, if Northcrest wanted to break her, they should have killed her spirit years ago. A fire awakened under her ribs, a fire 9 years in the making. She whispered to herself, "They don't know me at all." What they didn't know. Zara had a secret, a dangerous one, a powerful one she had never told a soul. Zara Hale wasn't just a janitor. She wasn't just someone born into poverty. She wasn't someone who lacked ambition or ability. No. Zara had spent 7 years studying quietly at night, taking online certifications, attending obscure community college classes anonymously, devouring every finance and accounting book she could borrow. She understood numbers better than half the analysts who mocked her. She understood corporate strategy better than Damien ever would. She understood how companies fell and how they could be rebuilt. And most importantly, she understood exactly how to expose the truth. She wasn't powerless. She was prepared, and the men trying to destroy her had absolutely no idea. The first step up. Zara walked home with her head held high. The city that once felt too large, too wealthy, too unreachable, now felt small, manageable, navigable, breakable. She opened her old laptop the moment she got home. She inserted a small USB she kept hidden behind a loose wall panel. Inside were access logs she had quietly copied, inconsistencies she had tracked, suspicious financial patterns she had observed, emails she'd seen while cleaning, board changes timed a little too perfectly, and one very specific document, a set of falsified quarterly reports submitted by someone inside the finance department 6 months before the leak. She didn't steal them. She simply recognized trash when she saw it being shoved under an expensive rug. Tonight, she spread the documents across her table. They tried to use her silence against her. They forgot silence has a memory, and hers was perfect. She whispered, "If you want a scapegoat, you chose the wrong woman." The morning after everything exploded, the city didn't look any different. Cars still honked. People still rushed to work. The skyscrapers still pierced the sky like nothing had happened. But for her, the world had cracked open. She woke up on her friend's worn-out couch with a stiff neck, mascara still faintly smudged at the corners of her eyes. For a few fragile seconds, she didn't remember where she was. Then it came back, the laughter, the words, the sentence that wouldn't stop echoing in her skull. "You'll always be just the girl from the cheap side of town." Her heart squeezed, but no tears came. She'd already cried them dry. Her friend padded out of the tiny kitchen, holding 2 chipped mugs of coffee. "You slept like a rock," her friend said softly. "You scared me a little." "I think my body shut down for self-defense," she murmured, accepting the mug. They sat in silence for a moment, the cheap instant coffee burning down her throat like reality. "What are you going to do?" her friend finally asked. That used to be a terrifying question. For years, her answer had always revolved around him. His schedule, his dreams, his family, what they wanted, what made them look good. This time, she surprised even herself. "I'm going to stop apologizing for where I come from," she said slowly. "And I'm going to make sure the next time they hear my name, it won't be as a joke." Her friend's brows rose. "You're serious?" "I'm done being the soft one they can push around," she said quietly. "They laughed at my accent, my clothes, my childhood. But the thing they kept underestimating was the one thing that kept me alive my whole life." "What's that?" "My hunger," she said. "My hunger to get out." The first months were brutal. She moved into a tiny studio in a rougher part of town, the kind of place where the elevator made strange noises and the hallway lights flickered like a horror movie. The rent was cheap, the walls were thin, the neighbors argued loudly, but it was hers. For the first time in years, there were no passive-aggressive comments about how she folded the towels, no eyes rolling over the brand of groceries she bought, no carefully disguised jabs like, "Not your fault, you didn't grow up around quality things, sweetheart. You'll learn." She worked whatever she could get, day shifts at a small cafe, evening shifts at a cleaning company, freelancing small admin tasks online in the middle of the night. Her hands cracked from the chemicals. Her feet ached. Her back burned. But every time exhaustion threatened to swallow her, she would hear their voices in her head. "You talk like you've never been anywhere." "You really don't know this, designer?" "Wow. You're cute when you try to sound smart." And instead of breaking her, those memories began to fuel her. While other people scrolled through social media to escape, she devoured videos about business, money, branding, negotiation, public speaking. She listened to audiobooks while she cleaned apartments that were bigger than her entire floor. She watched wealthy families leave dirty dishes and judgment in the same sink. Money is not the same as class, she thought bitterly. Scrubbing dried sauce off crystal plates, and they're about to find out the difference. One night, cleaning an office downtown, long after the executives had gone home, she stopped in front of a glass wall covered in marker scribbles. It was a marketing team's brainstorming board. Arrows, numbers, circles, target audience, pricing, strategy, pain points. She stared at it for a long time. Something in her brain clicked. These people weren't born knowing this. They just had access. Rooms, language, confidence. She had something they didn't. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, dismissed, talked over. She understood the customers nobody cared about, the ones with secondhand clothes, prepaid phones, and big dreams. An idea started forming, small and shaky at first. What if she stopped trying to squeeze herself into their world and instead built something that spoke directly to people like her? The first version of her dream was humble, almost embarrassingly small. An online page. She didn't have a designer. She didn't have fancy software. She had a 10-year-old laptop and free templates. At midnight, after her shifts, she sat cross-legged on her mattress, glowing blue from the screen light, and typed. For the girls who were told they don't belong in high places. For the women mocked for their accents, their neighborhoods, their dreams. She created an account that wasn't about luxury or fake perfection. It was about real women who worked double shifts, took night buses, helped siblings with homework, and still dared to imagine more. She posted short videos and anonymous stories from women she met at the cafe, at the cleaning job, in night classes. She talked about unfair bosses, classist comments, subtle humiliation in offices, and family gatherings. She didn't show her own face at first. She wasn't ready for that. But her voice was steady, soft but sharp, warm but unflinching. "Hey, Queen," she would say at the start of every video, "if they've ever laughed at where you come from, this one is for you." At first it was just a handful of views, a comment here, a heart emoji there. But then someone stitched one of her clips. Another woman with a similar story shared it. A follower wrote, "This is literally my life." Then more women joined. I've never heard anyone say this out loud. "Thank you for making me feel less crazy." I thought I was the only one. The numbers started to climb, slowly, then faster. Her notifications became a waterfall. Every time she wanted to quit, she opened her inbox and saw long messages from women around the country. Factory workers, nurses, assistants, single moms, students on scholarships. Some messaged late at night from toilets at their rich boyfriend's family parties. "Your videos are the only thing keeping me from losing my mind tonight," one wrote. She realized something powerful. Every time someone had mocked her background, they hadn't just insulted her. They had insulted an entire army of women like her. Now that army had found each other. Her page wasn't just emotional venting. Piece by piece, she began adding something more dangerous. Information. threads about how to read the contract they hope you won't understand. Short breakdowns like what they mean when they say, "You're like family here" at work. Simple guides. How to negotiate a raise when you come from a place where you were taught to be grateful for anything. She translated financial and legal jargon into the language of women who'd never heard words like asset allocation or equity at the dinner table. She never pretended to be an expert. She showed her process. "Here's what I'm learning, Queen," she said in one video, holding a highlighter and a secondhand book. "If they can understand this, so can we. No more gatekeeping." Her following exploded. Brands tried to slide into her messages with offers that didn't match her values. She turned most of them down. "I'm not going to sell these women overpriced nonsense just because they finally trust someone," she told her friend. Instead, she launched something of her own, a small, affordable online workshop called From Mocked to Untouchable. The price was low enough for a woman earning minimum wage to save up for, but high enough to make people take it seriously. She didn't promise miracles, she promised tools. "By the time they finish this, they'll never walk into a room the same way again," she said, outlining the modules in a notebook. Recognizing class-based manipulation, spotting red flags in romantic and work relationships, the psychology of shame and how elites weaponize it, how to build independent income streams one tiny step at a time. On launch day, she was terrified. "What if no one buys?" she whispered to herself, refreshing the page. 1 sale, 3 sales, 9, 20. By midnight, she had sold more seats than the number of people who had ever attended her ex's smug dinner parties. She stared at the payment notifications with shaking hands. This money didn't come from pleasing them, she realized. It came from serving women like me. Months turned into a year. Her tiny studio became filled with books, sticky notes, ring lights, and microphones. She upgraded her laptop. She hired a part-time assistant, another woman from a low-income background. She registered her work as a proper business. Then, as the demand for more help grew, she took the next leap, a foundation. Not a fancy one at first. It was more like an organized, funded mentorship network. But she chose the name carefully. She picked a word from her grandmother's language that meant those who rise together. The goal was simple: provide small emergency grants to women in class-based abusive relationships who needed money to leave safely. Offer scholarships to low-income girls who wanted to study law, finance, medicine, or tech, the very fields that had always been guarded by the wealthy. Connect those girls with mentors so they'd never walk into important rooms alone. Her first fundraiser was a live stream. She sat in her thrifted blazer, hair pulled back, heart pounding, and told her story without naming names. She talked about the laughter, the table where she'd sat biting her tongue, the way her dreams used to feel like a joke in someone else's living room. She didn't cry. Her voice only broke once when she said, "I used to think the worst thing that ever happened to me was being born on the wrong side of town. Now I know the worst thing would have been staying quiet about it." Donations started flowing in, $5, $10, $50, some with messages like "for my mom who never got out," or "for my younger self who needed this so badly." By the time she ended the stream, they had raised enough to fund several small grants and one full scholarship. She sat in the dark afterward, the only light coming from the string of cheap fairy lights on her wall. Her hands were still trembling, but for the first time, it wasn't from fear. It was from the weight of responsibility. "They trust me now," she thought. "I cannot become what I escaped." Queen, this is where the universe loves drama. Because while she was quietly building all of this, while she was turning humiliation into infrastructure, pain into programs, shame into power, her name began to travel in circles she'd never imagined. Podcasts invited her. Blogs wrote about the girl from the wrong side of town who was changing the game for working-class women. A popular talk show did a segment on economic abuse and used clips of one of her videos, And somewhere, in a familiar neighborhood with manicured lawns and imported rugs, people who used to laugh at her saw her face on a screen. At first they scoffed. Is that really her? She's overreacting. We weren't that bad. Everyone is a victim these days. But even they couldn't ignore the size of her audience. The way journalists framed her, the way her followers called her a lifeline. They had spent years telling her she wasn't on their level. Suddenly, they were the ones scrolling in silence, realizing she had climbed to a place they couldn't reach with money alone. The phone call came on a rainy Thursday. She was in the small office space she now rented. Nothing fancy, just 2 rooms above a grocery store. But it was painted in warm colors and full of sticky notes, charts, and secondhand plants. Her assistant was at the desk behind her, answering emails. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number from her old part of town. She almost didn't answer. Something inside her, maybe curiosity, maybe the ghost of who she once was, made her swipe. Hello? Silence for a beat, then a voice she hadn't heard in years, slightly older, edged with nervousness. Hi, it's me. Her spine straightened. For a moment she was back at that long dining table, holding her breath while expensive glasses clinked. Who? She asked, even though she knew. He said his name, her ex, once so tall in her mind, now somehow small through the speaker. Her assistant glanced up, immediately sensing the shift in her tone. What do you want? She asked, her voice calm, almost bored. He laughed weakly. Wow. Straight to business, huh? Look, I've been seeing you everywhere. Online, on TV. People at the hospital talk about your foundation. You've really done well for yourself. She didn't say, thank you. She didn't owe him that. There's, an event coming up, he continued, voice cracking. A charity gala, big donors, important people. They're looking for someone to speak about, class, economic abuse, all that. Your name came up. My family is involved in the planning. Of course they were. Of course, now that she was useful to their social image, they remembered she existed. Anne? She asked. They'd love to have you. He rushed on. You could share your story. Promote your foundation. There will be press, cameras, people with real money. It could be huge for you. He emphasized huge for you like he was doing her a favor. She almost laughed. In the background, she heard someone else's voice. Older, sharper, his mother. Tell her we're offering her a big opportunity, the woman hissed, not realizing the phone picked it up. And make sure she sounds grateful. Her stomach flipped, not with hurt anymore, but with a cold clarity. That's when she knew. This wasn't just a gala. This was the full circle moment the universe had been arranging. The same people who once mocked her as a stray they picked up from the poor side of town now needed her credibility to polish their reputation. Send the details by email, she said coolly. My team will review it. Team? He echoed, as if the word didn't belong to someone like her. Yes, she replied. When you treat people like they're nothing, sometimes they grow into someone who doesn't need your approval anymore. He tried to laugh it off. You haven't changed. Still dramatic. Oh, he had no idea. She hung up first. Her assistant stared at her. Was that? Yes, she said simply. Are you going to go? She looked at the notes on her wall, the statistics on economic abuse, the names of women approved for the next round of grants, the budget projections. Then she looked at her reflection in the dark window. Not the girl biting her tongue at a table where she didn't belong. A woman in control of her story. Oh, I'm going, she said slowly, but not as the quiet +1 they can dress up and sit at the far end of the table. Her lips curved into a small, dangerous smile. I'm going as the main event. The night of the gala arrived like a storm she had been preparing for her entire life. She stood in front of the mirror in her modest office, hands steady as she fastened the last clasp on her gown. It wasn't designer. It wasn't loaned. It wasn't selected by someone trying to mold her into a quiet accessory. It was hers, paid for with her own money, chosen by her own taste, worn with her own power. A deep, elegant black with structured shoulders and a sharp silhouette that commanded attention without begging for it. Her hair was swept up in a sleek, effortless bun that revealed the strong lines of her neck, lines that used to bow under shame. Not tonight. Her assistant stood behind her, almost breathless. "Queen, you look unbelievable." She didn't blush. She didn't shrink. She smiled, slow, confident, steady. Good. Let them choke on it. The venue was a mansion-turned ballroom, dripping in chandeliers and gold accents, the type of place she had once entered timidly, trying to walk quietly so she wouldn't disturb the atmosphere. But tonight, her heels echoed proudly against the marble floors. A valet swung open the glass doors. A cluster of elite guests turned to look, first out of habit, then again out of intrigue. Her entrance rippled through the room like electricity. She didn't rush. She didn't lower her eyes. She walked in with the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed permission to exist. A few women whispered, "Is that her?" A man murmured, "That's the woman from the foundation." Someone else gasped, "She's even more striking in person." Their fascination didn't gratify her. It confirmed what she already knew. Power was never about wealth. It was about presence. At the back of the room, her ex froze mid-conversation when he saw her. His jaw slackened. His eyes widened. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. She watched the shock crawl across his face. The last time he saw her, she had been small, shrinking under their words, apologizing for breathing too loudly, too enthusiastically, too authentically. The woman walking toward him now wasn't the same species. He swallowed hard, adjusting his tie, suddenly aware of every shallow piece of status he had built his ego on. His friends nudged each other. His new girlfriend, of a wealthy, polished family, raised an eyebrow in mild annoyance. He stammered, "You look different." "Of course," she said calmly. "Growth tends to do that." He blinked, not knowing how to respond. Before he could gather the scattered pieces of his pride, his mother approached, the same woman whose lips once curled with disdain, now plastered on an eager, brittle smile. "Oh, sweetheart," Mrs. Sterling exclaimed too loudly. "Look at you. My goodness, you've blossomed." She almost laughed. Blossoms weren't forged in fire. "Good evening," she replied curtly. Mrs. Sterling's eyes darted over her gown, her poise, her escort, a foundation representative standing beside her. Every detail made the older woman's smile strain tighter. "We are just thrilled you could attend. Absolutely honored. Everyone has been buzzing about the keynote speaker." "Your committee didn't invite me for my presence," she cut in smoothly. "You invited me for my platform." Mrs. Sterling froze. Her ex looked away. The girlfriend raised both brows now. It was delicious. She didn't linger. She didn't entertain their fake warmth. She simply excused herself with a polite nod and walked toward the front of the ballroom where the stage was set. A few major donors recognized her as she passed. "That's the founder I told you about." "She's doing groundbreaking work. Her workshops changed my niece's life." The comments drifted around her like soft currents of validation, not needed, but deserved. A coordinator rushed up to her, flustered. "You're right on time, Miss Hale," she said firmly. "I'll take it from here." She walked backstage, set down her clutch, adjusted the microphone, and inhaled slowly. Her assistant had helped her craft the speech, but the truth was simpler. She didn't need a script to tell the story she had lived. A hush fell over the ballroom. The lights dimmed. The MC introduced her. The founder of Rise Together, a nationally recognized advocate for economic justice. Applause, curious eyes, whispers of anticipation. She stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit her face, but she didn't flinch. Where fear once lived, certainty now grew. "Good evening," she began, her voice warm but commanding. I want to talk about something we rarely admit exists in rooms like this. Silence. Class cruelty. A few heads turned. A few backs stiffened. Her ex's heart sank into his stomach. She continued. We like to pretend that cruelty only comes in obvious forms, violence, insults, hostility. But there is another kind, quieter, colder, more poisonous. She swept her gaze across the room without mercy. It's the cruelty of exclusion, of belittling someone for where they grew up, of mocking someone's lack of designer knowledge, of calling them less than because they didn't inherit comfort. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, others leaned in, and often these wounds are inflicted with a smile. She let that hang. My entire life, I was told my background made me unworthy, too rough, too humble, too unimpressive to deserve space in rooms like this. People with spotless accents and polished shoes told me, without hesitation, that I didn't belong. Her ex's throat tightened. But here's the truth. Her voice strengthened. They were terrified of what I might become if I ever stopped believing them. A smattering of applause began, then grew. I built a foundation for women who come from places like mine. Women who scrub floors, ring up groceries, take night buses. Women who were told their dreams were embarrassing. Women who were laughed at when they dared to want more. Her voice softened. And those women, they are the backbone of this country. They are brilliant, resilient, overlooked, but no longer invisible. A wave of emotion passed through the crowd. She glanced briefly toward her ex's table. Not long enough to give him hope, but long enough to let the truth land. I stand here tonight not because I was welcomed by the people who had power, but because I built my own. The applause now was loud, not polite, genuine. And if there is one thing I want every young girl listening to remember, it is this. Your worth is not decided by the ZIP code you were born in. It is decided by the fire you refuse to let them extinguish. People stood. People cheered. People wiped tears. Her ex stared at her, utterly undone. His girlfriend leaned toward him and whispered something that made him turn pale. Mrs. Sterling didn't dare meet her eyes. She concluded, to every woman who was underestimated, rise. Don't wait for a seat at their table. Build your own and let them watch. Thunderous applause, a standing ovation, phones recording, her assistant crying backstage. She stepped away from the podium without looking back. Backstage, the coordinator rushed after her, breathless. Ms. Hale, half the guests want to meet you. Donors press. This is huge. She nodded politely. I'll speak to the press first. But before she entered the next room, someone called out her name, her ex. He had followed her, face flushed, hands trembling slightly, not from nerves, but from something else. Recognition. Can we please talk? He asked, breathless. She didn't smile. She didn't soften. She didn't stop walking. No. He reached out desperately. Please, I want to apologize. I was young, stupid. I didn't understand what I had. I didn't know who you'd become. She paused, just long enough to end him with grace. You didn't know who I already was, she corrected gently. You were simply too far above me to look down long enough to see it. His mouth fell open. And that's why you'll never be at my level. She stepped past him and entered the press room, where cameras, microphones, and flashing lights were waiting for her, not him. Tonight, she didn't chase anyone. Tonight, the world chased her. The press room buzzed like a hive, camera shutters clicking, journalists adjusting their mics, producers whispering last-second instructions. As she stepped in, the entire room shifted. Faces lit up. Heads turned. Several reporters straightened in their seats, as if royalty had walked in. She wasn't intimidated this time. She wasn't shrinking. She wasn't begging for space. She was the space. A coordinator hurried toward her, flustered. Ms. Hale, everyone's ready, whenever you are. She gave a small nod, then stepped into the semicircle of microphones. A reporter raised her hand immediately. Ms. Hale, can you tell us what inspired your foundation? What made you focus on class-based discrimination? Her voice didn't tremble. Not anymore. Lived experience, she replied simply. I know what it feels like to be dismissed because of your background, your clothes, your job, your accent. I know what it's like to be laughed at quietly across a dinner table by people who think wealth means worth. Several reporters jotted that down. And I know, she continued, how many brilliant women live in the shadows because no one ever gives them a chance. Another journalist jumped in. You've become a symbol for empowerment. Do you consider yourself a leader of this movement? She paused, not out of uncertainty but intention. I consider myself a mirror, she said, reflecting the strength women already had but were taught to hide. The room hummed with admiration. Someone in the back called out, Ms. Hale, what would you say to the people who underestimated you? A small, knowing smile curved her lips. I'd say thank you, she answered. They forced me to grow in ways comfort never could. The crowd erupted in applause. She continued speaking for nearly 20 minutes, answering questions about policy, economic barriers, women's safety, and the importance of financial independence. Her words weren't rehearsed. They flowed like truth finally given permission to breathe. And every time a camera flashed, it captured not a girl who escaped poverty, but a woman who reshaped the world that once rejected her. When the press conference ended, her assistant rushed to her side, eyes shining. You did it, the young woman whispered. You've completely changed the narrative. She squeezed her assistant's hand. We did it. They stepped out of the press room together, but before she could head to the car waiting outside, a familiar figure blocked her path. Mrs. Sterling, her ex's mother, the self-appointed queen of social superiority. Except now, she looked small, shaken, human. Dear, the woman began, forcing a brittle smile. I just wanted to say how inspiring your speech was. Truly. You've become quite impressive. The fakeness slid off her words like cheap perfume. She raised an eyebrow. Thank you, she replied graciously. I'm glad it resonated. Mrs. Sterling swallowed hard. While the board was talking, she continued, and we would be honored to have you consult on our future charity initiatives. Paid, of course, and you would have full creative direction. We believe your experience is very valuable. Ah, there it was, the pivot. The attempt to reclaim control by offering opportunity wrapped in false generosity. She didn't react immediately. She let the silence stretch until the older woman grew visibly uncomfortable. Mrs. Sterling, she finally said softly, I appreciate the offer. The woman exhaled in relief. But I must decline. The relief shattered. Decline? She stuttered, eyes wide. May I ask why? She tilted her head, voice gentle but unyielding. Because I don't work with organizations that treated me like a charity case before they needed my credibility. Every word was precise, every syllable surgical. Good night, she added, turning away. Mrs. Sterling didn't follow. Outside, cool night air brushed against her skin as she stepped toward the car. Her assistant opened the door, but before she got in, she took one last look at the mansion glowing behind her. This time, she didn't feel bitterness, not even triumph, just peace. Because she realized something profound. She no longer needed to prove anything to them. She didn't need their validation. She didn't need their money. She didn't need their tables. She had built her own, and the world had shown up. The ride back to the city was quiet. Her assistant eventually fell asleep beside her, exhausted from the adrenaline. Through the window, she watched the skyline rise toward them, the skyscrapers dotted with light, the streets humming with life. The city hadn't changed, but she had. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages. Congratulations, donor inquiries, collaboration requests, grateful notes from women around the country who watched the live stream and felt seen for the first time. She opened one message at random. Because of you, I'm applying for the scholarship I've been too scared to try. Thank you for giving us hope. Another. My ex used to tell me I was nothing. Tonight I cried because your words reminded me he was wrong. Another. I want to join your foundation someday. Please don't stop. Her heart swelled, not painfully, but powerfully. She typed a quick message to her assistant. Tomorrow we start planning the next expansion. Because her story wasn't ending here. It was just beginning. When she finally walked into her apartment, no longer a tiny studio, but a warm, beautiful home she chose herself, she caught her reflection in the foyer mirror. Not a victim, not the quiet girl at the end of the table, not the outsider whose dreams were mocked, a leader, a founder, a force, a queen she crowned herself. She whispered into the quiet, "They didn't break me, they built me." And with that, she turned off the lights and stepped into the future she created with her own hands.